Miss Andrews, are you okay?
Definitely not. I'm actress Valerie Alline, and I play Amy Andrews in the new film, The Empty Space.
It's okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
A violent attack leaves her without her boyfriend, her home, her sense of self. Amy, like so many of us, suffers from mental illness. As she tries to get her life back together, she's haunted by terrifying visions that may or may not be real. Empty Space goes beyond the slasher and takes you deep into the void. We hope you join us as our film premieres on streaming. We also hope that not only are you frightened, but you gain some insight into a serious problem that affects so many people, including the filmmakers.
I know how it sounds. What if it's real?
The Empty Space, a terrifying new vision from director Andrew Hara.
What's up, guys? Remember when I said this week was going to be Romeo and Juliet? Well, I took you for fools because it's not happening. It's probably going to be Suicide Kings first. It might be still Romeo and Juliet. Who knows? Who knows what our schedule is? Anyway, welcome to the Bomb Squad. Also, the Empty Space right there is still joins its brothers, last ones in Borderland, in the Tubi world, in Tubi Land. It's like Barbie Land, but even cheaper. Go check it out. Empty Space. You saw the trailer before this. You know what it's about. Go watch it. And if you have watched it, tell us what you think in the comments. And if you make a good comment, I won't delete it. It's win-win. Anyway, welcome to the Bomb Squad, guys. I will delete if you say anything even remotely negative about my fucking movie that I bled for.
Just totally demonetized. Also, they know what movie this is because they would have clicked on it after seeing the name of the.
Yeah, but
They will know by the name of the title.
Well, see, here's the thing. They saw the title. They said, "Oh, I want to see this review to Suicide Squad." And then it started. And the lights got dim and a trailer started. And they're like, what's this? I'm so intrigued and yet turned on. Let me go to Tubi and watch it. And now they're confused as to why we're talking about Suicide Squad.
Suicide Kings.
Suicide Kings.
It's not even the right movie.
What?
Which one did you guys watch? What did you guys watch?
Suicide Kings?
Good.
Okay.
Cool. I also watched Suicide Kings.
It's good. It's also good that we're all clearly slightly inebriated in some way.
I'm
Because
not slightly inebriated. I'm just off of work and I just boxed. So I'm on a runner's high.
you're on that. Because I watched this movie getting pretty fucked up, and I think it's really like whole, like, I don't know, it's such a good 90s movie.
Before we start, okay, so we watched Suicide Kings from 1997. It's directed by Peter O'Fallon. It stars my baby Christopher Walken. It stars the best comedian of the 90s, Dennis Leary. It stars Sean Patrick Flanny, who you're like, hey, is that one of the Boondock Saints? Just kidding, no one remembers who those are. And it stars Henry Thomas, who you know doing a terrible job of pretending to be Jack Nicholson. Just kidding, I'll probably cut that out. Jay Moore.
Not even what?
Oh, because he plays Jack Nicholson in the Shining sequel that I hated, but everyone else seems to like.
Gotcha.
It also has Brad Garrett and Johnny Galecki. Damn, did the casting director just take his casting from CBS primetime?
Must have. Did you mention Jay Moore?
Yeah, I said Jay Moore, who was also probably on CBS at one time or another. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Suicide Squad, Joshua.
Suicide Kings.
Suicide Kings. That's going to happen a lot, guys. Strap in. I'm not even high yet.
I've had half a beer.
I've had half a fucking drag, and it's not affecting me in any way. Josh, tell us what Suicide Kings is, but say it as if it was Suicide Squad. Do 14 intros.
They're on a mission to. I don't even remember what happens in Suicide Squad, and I liked those movies. But no, this movie, Suicide Kings, is about 4 friends who have the worst kidnapping scheme of all time. It's immediately a poor decision. They make every wrong move. It's it's good. It's good times. It's a good
Okay,
movie.
well that's great. Josh told us his opinion. He didn't really tell us what the movie's about. You know, exactly what we
That's
asked him
pretty
to
accurate.
do.
He wasn't wrong.
It's like, hey Josh, what's the Matrix about? And he's like, it's about a computer programmer who doesn't like his job. It's like, well, you're not. I
Yeah.
mean, that's is correct what it is.
And he
But-
does something about it.
Yeah.
That's
He really
true.
does it.
He hates his boss.
Fucking hates that guy.
So yeah, so Suicide Squad is about Christopher Walken plays a mafia guy, and he's retired. Quote, wink, wink. And so these four upper rich kids decide to kidnap him because one of their sisters has also been kidnapped by unrelated people. But they assume that he can fix the problem, and also that he can pony up the cash because they have a $2 million ransom. This movie was made in 1997. It's a really good 1990s film. William, what did you think of the Suicide? Are you telling me we're some kind of Suicide Kings?
We could be. The last time I actually watched this movie, I was fucked up with U2
Cool.
during the
Oh,
summer
yeah.
of Last Days, I believe. That's
Oh,
Andrew
yeah.
Warner right
It was
there.
like 10 years ago or like 12 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
Go to Tubi, guys. Check it out and come back.
Right. So you can one-stop shop.
Well,
But,
The Last Ones.
The Last
Search
Ones,
for that
yes,
on
yeah.
Tubi.
It was The Last of Us at the time.
Just those last days.
Oh, yeah, shit.
It was Gus Van Sant's Last Days.
all we know
Yeah.
for sure is that last is in the titles, and then there's
Last
zombie.
Catwoman, James Gandolfini. No, I think it was good. I think something that it kind of suffers from, if I'm going to start with the negative first, because why not? I think it has a lot of different styles kind of going on. So it's kind of like this comedy with Dennis Leary and like his friend. They have kind of like a little sub story that's two trash talking hitmen driving around the city, and then we have these four rich kids that are hanging out with Christopher Walken, and Christopher Walken's like hilarious, and these kids are all stressed out. But then there's also sort of like this like hip kind of like 90s vibe sort of like happening in the background. And it also
Right.
sometimes kind of veers into rom-com territory. So I will say that this movie has a lot of great stuff going on, but it does have a lot kind of going on. It does have a lot of different sort of vibes, and I think they all kind of work, but I think sometimes they don't.
There is like a kind of a clash where it doesn't always blend the styles that well.
Yeah.
But you almost overlook it because you're like, oh man, they don't even make movies like this
Well,
anymore.
yeah,
So
and-
cool.
I
Yeah.
think to me the thing that's always jarring is that it has for no reason whatsoever 7 style opening credits where it's like playing this like hip grungy rock song, and then
Yeah.
like
The
the
7 credits.
Yeah,
It was
the-
literally the credits from 7.
yeah, the credits
And
are
this-
like
this-
shooting
this-
at the screen.
Yeah.
The score is like that too, where it's like,
Yeah.
no, don't do like do the Tarantino like pop songs. That's
Right.
what this movie is. You know,
Yeah.
that's the weird
But
thing
and
to me.
I kind of like it
He's
because
not
like
dirty.
yeah, the very beginning, it's them planning the heist. They're kind of like they're planning how they're gonna trick Charlie, played by Chris Walken, into. I call him Chris. We're not that good at terms. I call him, and so they're like planning it, and like you see it kind of happening, and you see it messing up, and it's dead serious. Like the whole like there's kind of jokes, but it's kind of like jokes in a DC movie where it's like very like it's just something funny they're saying, but their situation's not funny. And so,
Right.
like, also, again, to kind of talk about the weird styles. So they kidnap Charlie. Their plan is to get him in his car, and then they're gonna drive him and like gas him with like chloroform, and then
Yeah.
they like, so he like starts to fight back, and then he like kicks the window out of the car, which is kind of cool. But then they like crash the car, and then a semi is gonna hit the car, and it's like, why is there an action scene in the middle of this kind of like
And
one
like,
location
somebody-
drama thriller, you know?
The truck is coming at them from like a mile away.
Yeah.
And like he's glaring. It's like that scene in Austin Powers where like the guard is like standing in front of the truck and he won't move.
Well,
It's like that
it is-
truck could have easily stopped.
And
it's a tunnel, you know, and
Yeah.
he's busy.
And the
He's
truck
very busy.
hits
Going
the
70
truck
miles an
hits the
hour.
car. Yeah, the truck hits the car. It spins, and then they just take off as if nobody would like be stopped or like calling the police. And then so, but once you get to the house is when the movie kind of starts. So these kids, like they're Jimmy, the guy from The Big Bang Theory. He's the owner of the house. He plays
Oh
Ira.
yeah, Ira. He's so
Oh,
good.
I love
He's
that show.
he is like the heart of this film.
Yeah.
like in a
There's
weird way.
There's a lot
He's
of
the man.
parts that I will say above everything, the acting is 100% on point. Like everyone, Jeremy Sisto is in it. Like just listening to that cast, and this is when they were young and like hungry, you know. And Chris Walken, like every once in a while, it's cool to see Chris Walken. Like, oh yeah, he's a real actor.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
on that note, I feel like the way that he kind of, because he's like the older guy with all these kids in this movie, and he kind of like plays them a little bit, but he's also sort of like a father figure
Right,
in a
right.
way. And I kind of feel like that might have been how it was like on the actual set. Like
Yeah.
they were kind of like trying to be these like cool action stars, and like he's been there, done that, but he's like there to kind of like Tom Hanks their asses or something.
Right, right. Well, and like, oh, go ahead, Josh.
And I was just gonna say, like, it is funny because we did, me and you, Andrew, did the King of New York, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, we
way
didn't
back
review-
in the.
We didn't review it. We just watched it.
I think we just watched it because it's a good movie, but it's like, oh yeah, like there's this almost like when you rarely see Christopher Walken being like, oh yeah, he's like a really good actor. He does kind of carry a lot of like this film just with like his kind of like gravitas, where you're like he's like the center of it, you know. It's I don't know. It's very interesting to me because you almost forget if you haven't seen like him in a real movie in a while.
Well, and okay, so like William was saying, once the movie starts, so like it's these guys in the house. Ira doesn't know that they're kidnapping anyone, and so he's like freaking out the whole time because he's like,
Right, it's Ira's dad's house. It's his
yeah,
dad's house.
yeah.
Right.
And so he'll
They're
be
all
like,
rich kids,
he
yeah.
does, like one of the funniest things is he makes everyone take off their shoes, and they're like kidnapping
Yeah.
someone, you know. And they've cut off,
It's like
they've
tiny
cut
with
off Charlie's finger because they cut off the girl's finger, and so they say to make sure that Christopher Walken knows that it's real. They're like, anything that happens to her is gonna happen to you, and so we're starting by cutting off your finger, and that's kind of like that's when Charlie realizes that they're not just joking around. But the whole movie is just them kind of talking in the house, like they're kind of like playing this weird cat and mouse game, and like Christopher Walken is literally playing cat and mouse with every single character in the movie.
Right. His
And,
whole
like-
deal is he brings everybody like a poker game.
Yeah. And then you have like, and then also you have Dennis Leary, and he's with some guy whose name you would know, but I can't.
It's Louis Lombardi. He's the short little guy Skip from The Sopranos. He's an FBI agent in season 2. That's how most people would probably recognize. He has a lisp, kind of.
So they're just driving around, just like joking around like it's Pulp Fiction. Like Dennis Leary got new shoes that are made of like eel, and they keep
Oh,
calling-
Stingray, his fish boots.
They keep
Yeah.
calling them fish boots, and he, like at one point he points the gun at the other guy, and he's like, "Don't fucking ever mention my fish boots again."
Yeah.
They also like they run into this. This is the most '90s like part of the movie where they run into a homeless guy who's like, "I'm gonna wash your window," and then Dennis Leary's getting frustrated. But to show that he's homeless, he's wearing a comical hunting hat with the flaps, and it's like
Right.
that's such a like.
90s.
Oh man, you know someone's homeless in a '90s movie if they're wearing this
Right.
hat.
Yeah.
You know.
Ash barrel burning somewhere.
And like, and so
Broken
they're kind of
trunks.
just doing their own stuff. It's pretty,
right. Just
it's pretty funny, but they're also like going around looking for the winner. It reminded me of a little movie called Borderland, just to complete the circle.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
I think that we're missing a key piece of information. I just missed it. But Dennis Leary is Christopher Walken's like latchkey
Yes.
guy. It's like his
Yeah.
number 2.
Oh yeah. He's working back. He's trying to find where they're keeping this girl.
Yeah, and he's trying to find it
also
for
Tom
Chris
Cruise.
Walken. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, we sometimes
Right.
cut to Chris Walken's lawyer, who's kind of also doing the same thing, but from a more lawyery
Yeah.
standpoint. It's an interesting
He's
cast.
connected for sure.
Yeah. And
There is
so-
a weird. There is a weak link here, and it's the two kidnappers. Kind of don't
Yeah.
need to be in the movie. They're almost too
Yeah.
much.
No, I
They
think
only
they're
add-
yeah. They're there to
Story-wise,
like. There's a twist at the end, which we'll get to, and so the two kidnappers are like reinforcing.
Ray Romano's brother.
Yeah, it's Brad Garrett, and they're reinforcing
Yeah.
the twist is coming. I don't think you really needed them, but it does add like a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they're to show the threats real, but
And
they're
they-
both like two jokers.
they-
like they're
they
so
will-
like
they're kinda
psycho, like movie
Yeah,
psycho.
but
I
they
don't
have
know.
one of the best scenes in the film, which is unrelated to where we see him most of the time, but we'll talk about later. So yeah, so the whole movie is just kind of them talking back and forth and trying to figure out who stole it, and then like pretty quickly they realize that someone in the house is part of the kidnapping, and so Charlie's not only trying to survive, but he's also trying to like stay. Well, he's trying to stay alive. He's trying to find out who did it, and he's also trying to figure out who in the office or who in the house is part of it. You know, and
Yeah.
for the fact that it's just them talking, like a couple of things happen. There's a scene where like a security guard comes in, and he's like the most again 90s security guard ever.
Yeah, he has such an attitude.
Yeah,
He's
he's
like-
so mean to Ira.
Yeah.
Although I do love like the weird like the slapstick where they have to like move Christopher Walken to another
Yeah.
room. So Ira is like,
Oh yeah.
what the fuck is that? So they
Yeah.
both turn around and they like wheel him past like it's Betty
Which
Hill
is-
or something.
It's not only funny, but it
Weird
really
mix of
works.
comedy.
Yeah. What about 100% worked
It
on
works
me?
if you're into it, but if you're not, I could see someone
Yeah.
being like, "This is
Yeah,
funny."
I'm saying like you have to like Ira to like this movie.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
The whole
otherwise,
really.
I think so.
Ira's like the Jar Jar Binks of this film, where like if you're not into
Yeah.
him,
He could have been so famous, but everybody
Yeah.
hated him.
if we
Well,
get
not
him
Ira,
working,
but
he's a funnier character than
Yeah.
what we had before. Yeah.
and so yeah, overall the movies, it like I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. I think like I don't know, what do you guys think?
What's that?
That's
What's your
It's
favorite part
good.
of this film?
Favorite part? Oh, it sounds like Josh. You got something?
oh no, just go ahead. Yeah, Have at
favorite
it.
part. I mean, I
There-
don't.
there's a lot of good scenes. It's
Yeah.
it's
I like-
very it's very interesting the way he turns them. I don't know. I do think Christopher Walken is like the best part. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think anyone
Well, yeah.
would disagree, but the way he turns them by one, he gets Ira on his side, which is easy because Ira is the
Right,
most easily
self-flattery.
tricked.
Just, you're
But
not
he
a bad
tells
boy.
Ira like, I think someone's like working against, knowing Ira will immediately like tell someone else, so they'll start like suspecting each other. I don't know. It's,
Right.
like he uses every like psychological trick.
Well, and that's
It's-
so funny, yeah, because he tells Ira like, "Hey, there might be an inside person, but don't tell anyone." And then the next scene is literally Ira like talking to, or he's talking to Christopher. No, someone tells Ira. It's
Yeah,
one
I
of
think
it's the medical guy.
TK, yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
heroin guy.
TK, yeah.
yeah. And he
True.
tells him like, "Hey, you're like someone's. There might be an inside guy because TK seems to be the smartest of the bunch."
Mhm.
And so he tells Ira, which kind of contradicts what I just said, but then Ira like immediately cuts to Ira like telling Christopher Walken that he knows and he's gonna help smoke him out.
Right, and I think that, like the movie kind of leads you to believe too that Christopher Walken, like no matter who he would have told, he probably knows that person would have told Ira because
Yeah.
he's obviously
Yeah, like the House of Cards will like tumble essentially.
Right,
right.
He
Well,
just
and
wants
it's-
to like figure it out.
That's so
Yeah.
that's like definitely the crux of the movie for sure. Like after you said that, that's my favorite part of the movie too. It's just like how he like gets into their minds and like he's just so experienced and like I don't know. It was just
Yeah, like
it was
he's
really
like never
fun.
not in control essentially. Like
Yeah,
once he kind of like gets his bearings.
Yeah.
Like
That
even like
to
when
me
he brings
is-
him to the car, he's like, "Yeah, let's go. I'm down with the guys." And it's like he just always has to know that something bad might be happening.
Right.
He's
One,
planning it.
I think one of the cool things about like the aspect of Christopher Walken is that he is kind of like the cool thing about him is that at the very beginning you find out that Charlie doesn't, or he says that he doesn't lie, like he's telling the truth the whole time. And if you watch the movie, he is constantly telling. He's like the only one in the whole group who's ever telling the truth about what
Who,
he's gonna
Charlie?
do. Yeah, Charlie, about what he's gonna do. Like, I mean, he'll threaten them and stuff, but he'll also like he's never lying to them. And I think
Yeah.
that makes an interesting dynamic, especially like making the other characters these kind of waspy rich kids, like who never like they're like, it's like they're all suffering from that rich kid's disease, and so they literally never like they all lie to each other. They're lying to Charlie. They're lying to themselves, and so it's like it's interesting to kind of throw Charlie in the mix of that, where it's like, oh no, and I think that's why Ira is also a fun character because he also doesn't lie, but for a different reason because he's too dumb to lie.
Yeah, he's
he
too
oddly has
innocent.
street smarts in a way.
Yeah,
Even though he's like so lame, like that's what Christopher Walken says is like he says something about like academic shit is bullshit. He's like street smarts, the only thing that matters.
yeah,
And like Ira he knows what's up as soon as he walks in. He's just like, no, I didn't fucking do this. Y'all are all on your fucking own. I'm not dying because of your ass.
and he
He's right.
tells them when as you're growing up, he's like, children lie, women lie, men lie. The only thing that doesn't lie is the word on the street.
Yeah, that's what he
So
says.
I thought that was like that's kind of the whole crux of the movie.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Charlie representing the street is the one who's the only one who's actually trying to figure things out.
Right.
And
And
I-
it's kind of like it's kind of funny as like a theme of a movie because like that's we're so about eat the rich now and like we're
Right.
so past that it's like I was watching it today and I was like, what is this movie saying? And I was like, it was a message we needed at the time.
Yeah.
We're fucking dumb.
I thought about that too, and it is kind of funny that it's like Oh yeah, back in the 90s you could make a movie about like rich kids and like not have to comment that much on how rich they are, you know? Like,
Right.
Right,
That's
it's just a
what they were
facet of
about.
their lives.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
They wanted cool sets and like sexy apartments, so all the kids were
right.
rich.
Yeah. And like, yeah, and I think one of the best things about this movie, other than Christopher Walken, is the chemistry because they do feel like they've been friends forever. You know, like they kind of shit
Yeah.
on each other in that way, where they never give each other like actual compliments. They're always like like Jay Moore tells Christopher Walken that TK is like really smart, but he never gives TK that same compliment. He's always kind
Right.
of makes fun of
Right.
TK, and that's kind of how male friends can be, where
Mhm.
it's like, oh
It's
yeah,
like
I
it's
love
a
this guy.
given, you know.
Yeah, he's like super
Oh,
talented,
heck
but it's like if he
yeah.
asks, I'll be like, oh, he sucks. You know, like,
Yeah,
oh,
he
you
sucks
suck.
more.
And I think that like whoever wrote this was clearly had a big friends group because they really like
Yeah.
hit
Got that
that
dynamic
home.
down.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
even like you even see it like even the way that guy did chemistry because Dennis Leary and Chris Walken aren't in the movie. Like they're in it at the beginning and then at the end.
Mhm.
But the
Yeah.
whole time they're not together. But you still like at no point are you like, oh, is Dennis Leary gonna like just give this up and like stop fucking trying to help him? And it's like,
Right.
no, he's loyal to Chris Walken, you know, he's loyal to Charlie. And so the way this guy did characters, he it really like it's kind of funny like going right after we saw Mickey and Nikki, you know, because it's almost like that movie was about how men's friendships can be so like toxic and
Yeah.
terrible. And this movie's kind of like, oh, but also men's friendships can be like helpful and like leaning upon, you know?
Yeah. Which can turn toxic sometimes.
I mean, it doesn't end up being helpful when they're all attacking each other at the end, but you know
Well,
that's
and
just the machinations.
that's kind of the thing that Charlie's saying because he's like, are how much are they really your friend, you know? And
Right,
so it
right.
kind of
Like who's
becomes
lying to who? Well,
Mhm.
it's funny because he targets Jay Moore right away. It's like, well, yeah, he looks like and acts like the biggest asshole in the room, just
Yeah.
like
But
in every
see,
movie, you know.
the
But
question
he is innocent.
is, does he target Jay Moore, or does he go at Jay Moore because Jay Moore is clearly the loudest and wants to be the leader, and it kind of helps Charlie figure out where everyone else is. Because when you watch it, you're like, oh, Charlie doesn't really care that much about Jay Moore. Like he doesn't really ever ask Jay Moore about Jay Moore. He always asks him about everyone else, and I think he does it to kind of like figure out what like how everyone thinks about each other, and I think that's very
Right.
smart.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because Jay Moore wants to be like, oh, I know the most
Mhm.
because I'm in charge, so I'll give you this info.
And that's why,
Yeah, no,
like,
it's
at the end when there's the reveal, he kind of uses Jay Moore as a tool to like get it out because he knows
Yeah.
that Jay Moore once he incepts him in the head, that's it. Like Jay Moore's not gonna stop until he finds out the truth. And so like
Right.
I
It just
think
takes one crazy person to make everyone else fall in line.
yeah, I think this movie's a lot like it's because it's kind of like, oh, what if these Guidos met these rich kids? But it's a lot smarter than you think. It's very interesting.
Right.
I say too. There is one. This is like the most Tarantino part, where Dennis Leary is essentially kind of meeting various oddballs to try to get closer to the truth. And
Yeah.
he goes to Laura San Giacomo, Maya from Just Shoot Me,
Oh yeah.
and she
Oh, yeah.
tells this story of like Charlie back in the day, and like to show that it's the old days. He has like this ridiculous long hair, but I don't think it's not like supposed to be funny, but it's like you would totally do that as a joke now, you know,
Yeah.
in like a comedy, like a sketch comedy or something. But it's like no, yeah, this is 20 years ago, so of course Christopher Walken had long, luxurious hair.
Also,
It was the 70s.
it literally cuts to him doing the Saturday Night Live like dance. So I don't know why Josh doesn't think that it was supposed to be humorous when you see him. He's like he does this thing, you know.
Yeah, that's just how it was in the 70s. That's what
And it doesn't
everyone was
stop,
doing.
yeah.
Disco, baby.
Well, and see, but I think like
We're all
I don't
high.
know. It's a very thin line, and I can see where people would not like it. But I kind of like the way because like that scene, it's ridiculous. Like he has long hair. He's doing like the stupid goofy dancing. And like the whole scene is about her, like her pimp is mad that she bought new shoes. And so he like Charlie kind of fixes the problem because he gives him a ring. And then like the end of the story is like, oh, Charlie bought her the exact same pair of shoes after like he kind of rescued her from this pimp. And so that's like a cool part. Like that's kind of the funny story. But then it immediately cuts to like, oh, what happened afterwards, and it shows Charlie and the pimp in the bathroom, and the pimp is like, hey Charlie, what the, and Charlie just immediately kills him. Like there's no questions, there's no like back and forth. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh, you're dead. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
that's
still in service of like showing his character.
well,
Yeah,
and I
like
think, but that's
it's
like kind of the point is that like they're kind of showing that like this mundaneness of life or like the kind of silliness of life, it doesn't stop people from Charlie or from these criminals from being who they are. And
Right.
so like that's kind of like going throughout the whole movie, like, oh, Charlie is like, he's trustworthy, he's a good guy, he's funny, and he's smart, and also he'll kill you if you take his ring in any way. You know?
Right.
Like there's no
Around
question.
him.
Yeah. And I think it
Like,
plays
really
into the end.
around him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so like that happens a couple of times. Like there's another scene that I really like. It's one of my second favorite scene where they're telling the story about Charlie and how he had these neighbors that had really loud dogs, and Charlie kept telling them to shut up. And they didn't. And so then the cops showed up after like a week, after like the dogs stopped making noise, and they searched the house, and the neighbors were gone. And like the dogs were fine though. And so then Charlie's like, oh, and then they're like, oh, so that's like a show of how bad he is, because like they never found the neighbors. They're just like they just found the dogs who were just like eating their food and stuff. And then Charlie's like, oh no, that's not the story. The story is that they fucked me over. It had nothing to do with the loud dogs. And he's like, and also the dogs weren't eating their food. They're eating the neighbors. Like that's how
Yeah.
we got rid of them.
right.
And
Yeah.
it's like this thing where it's like even this, like every story, once you kind of see the reality, is so much worse. Like this guy
Yeah.
is not, you know, like he's not on a redemption like arc, you know.
Well, no, yeah, but it's like no, he had a good reason, but also what he did to them was even yeah, like it's
Yeah.
like better and worse. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
It kind of
it
reminds
one-ups
me of
itself.
like the scene from the Usual Suspects where they also give him long hair, where like he kills, like Kaiser Soze kills everyone and burns down the village and kills their family, and they're, because it's like, oh yeah, these guys are criminals. You know, like that's
Right.
that's the scene
It's-
again.
And like that's kind of like how the rich kids see Christopher Walken too. Like they
Mm-hmm.
just don't realize that like this word of the street is that he is actually fucked up and
Yeah.
it's way worse than those rich kids ever could have thought that this kidnapping plot could be. Which
Right.
I guess makes us the rich kids
Yeah.
as viewers. Like we don't really know that these like we like, especially back in the '90s, you love watching crime films,
Yeah.
and you know then it's all of a sudden like you realize how awful these people are, and it kind of ruins your childhood dream.
Yeah.
Like this, that might be kind of like the theme of this movie in a way. Like
Yeah.
just these kids getting in over their heads and all their stories
Definitely.
walking being worse than you imagined.
And I think a big theme of this movie is also like the fact that lying is eventually gonna bite you in the ass, whether you want it to or not. Like it only gets you so far. Like it's the same thing with like, you know, people putting up maybe not lying, but maybe putting up a front about who you really are. Like the pimp does it
Yeah.
and he gets murdered. The neighbors do it and they get fed to dogs. A couple of these people do it and like they get also bad stuff happening to
You,
them.
you can almost see that as the
remember.
crux, though, of like Charlie putting up the front of being like a respectable,
Mhm.
normal, retired guy is the reason he's kidnapped and
Right.
you know has his finger
Right.
cut off. Yeah, This
Yeah.
is
Right.
interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
His
this
line.
I almost feel like this movie is just like kind of like a blend of like funny and poignant enough to like this should be the example, not like Boondock Saints, where it's like no, this kind of succeeds at what Boondock Saints is kind of trying to me.
Yeah.
You know,
And it very much feels inspired by Tarantino and Kevin Smith and all those kind of
Yeah.
directors. And like, but in a good way where Boondock Saints, I mean, I like Boondock Saints. Maybe we'll talk about it on here. We can talk about Troy Duffy and his great ideas.
He's
sorry.
totally staying on the rails. all the
Sorry,
time.
Troy, let's get a drink at your bar.
Nice guy.
But Boondock Saints feels derivative of Quentin Tarantino. This
Right.
movie feels inspired by Quentin Tarantino. And there is a difference.
Mhm.
And so, like, I don't know. I think like there's also like you barely see the girl, but she has a presence. One of the most impressive things about this movie is how little screen time characters get, but how important they feel. You know, and like
Yeah.
and I think it's because like they don't just do flashbacks like other movies. I mean, there's a couple of times where they just do random, but almost every flashback they do is a call. It either gets called back or it is a called back to later. Like even the pimp scene, they show the importance of the ring, and then
Mhm.
later, there's a part uh, where you see his ring and it's off, and because of that earlier story, you know that because his ring is off, bad shit is about to happen. And
Right.
even then, like the ring they cut off, I mean, the finger they cut off is obviously the one with the ring, and so it already has some importance.
Yeah, he like threatens them, and then you
But yeah,
see the threat. No, it's cool. It actually is pretty
Yeah.
tight, even
Yeah.
though it feels very sprawling.
I
It
will
always
say
comes back to itself.
right. It never leaves
Yeah.
anything kind of like unturned.
The scene where they do show the sister in the rain, where she like the scene where she's like kidnapped. Um, that is a bit much. That is a very '90s rom com. Like the song they're
yeah.
playing and everything
I
is
know,
so
and at the
like,
very
oh,
end,
making out in the
song is
rain,
what
you
I'm
know.
talking about. Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
The song is like,
This
I
song.
wanna hold your hand, baby girl. It's like, okay, guys.
Hold on.
It sounds like Creed.
Yeah. And on that same kind of note, it's like I feel like I was really interested in, Christopher Walken playing these kids and then also Dennis Leary being angry, but like the one thing I just really didn't care about at all was like this guy and his girlfriend. Like I don't give a
Really?
shit about their relationship whatsoever.
Yeah.
No, I don't even
Yeah,
know
and
the
Oh,
guy.
yeah,
that
yeah,
is
that
that
turned
is
out.
the weird. And I don't know, should we talk about like the twist?
Well,
It makes the whole twist like I don't give a shit about the twist. I care about Christopher Walken, but like
Right, you don't
I
like
don't
feel
feel bad
bad
at
at
all.
the end.
No,
Yeah, at
I-
least I
not at
don't.
all.
but I think that's kind of
Did they get back
again,
together?
yeah, it's kind of the point. Like it's like the woman is definitely an ex machina.
Yeah, but like not built up enough. Like
Yeah.
I didn't care that like their parents didn't like each other. I was like, well then find someone else.
Right,
Like,
right.
I don't know.
Well,
They
and
didn't make me see anything about her that made her so special, and I didn't see why he was so special. So it was like, fuck them.
you know, and let's guys. I think Suicide Squad is great. I think it's worth watching. It's on HBO Max. Go check it out. Don't let us spoil it for you here. Go watch it right now because it does have a pretty cool ending. Or well, it has a diversive ending that we'll get to in a second. But go check it out. It's on Max. Once you
Divisive.
watch it, come back because we're about to spoil the fuck out of it. Okay, so
Did
at
I
the
get
end,
spoiler? I'm so sorry.
spoilers. I don't think you had, but I wanted to
Okay.
get through it. So spoilers. Okay, at the end, Charlie manages to find the girl. They rescue Charlie. You find out that it was the brother who actually turned her in because he owed gambling debts. And then these like for 50,000, and then these guys when they called for the ransom, they made it 2 million, and that's why he freaked out and devised this whole plan. So it's really the brother. And then Charlie gets out. He goes to prison. Then you find out the sister was like never kidnapped, and what happened was she got in touch with the two hitmen, and they decided to bump it up to 2 million, and they would each keep 1 million so that she and her boyfriend could run away. And so at the
That's like
very
insane.
so at the very I know what a complicated fucking plot. So and it works better in the movie because I don't
No,
like
it doesn't.
it's not laid out like this.
It's exactly
That's
laid
like-
out like that.
Like I've almost
That
like
movie at the
I
very
almost
end.
think
It's insane.
you think more will happen with the hitmen, and to just not have them exist would almost be better than having them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you
It's
need someone
and
to be
they're
on the
just
other
so
side.
wacky
Yeah.
too. Like
So
they're
then
so
at the very end, because Charlie and Dennis Leary kill both of the hitmen, and they find out that they never had the girl. And at the very end, you find out the girl and Max, her boyfriend, were the ones behind the plot. And so then you find Charlie, and he goes to them, and then he fucking murders the shit out of them. And like,
well, and it has that downbeat score, like, oh, the price of sin. But I was like, well, no, like, not only did they screw over this guy who's going to kill them, but they're just letting their friends and family think she's dead for the rest of their life. Like, it's just such a bad plan.
it's so funny
He's a
that
bad friend.
Josh is like, why did they play this sad song? All they did was turn over everyone they loved and then get murdered. Why would you want a sad song during that?
Like, no, I know what you're saying, but to
But
me,
I
it's more
think-
like they deserve it, you know?
See, I
It's
wonder
understood.
because I also don't feel bad for them, and it's kind of like it ends up being this character beat for Christopher Walken because it's kind of like, oh, Christopher Walken told you at the beginning that he was going to find out who kidnapped her and murdered them. And that's what he does. Like it's that whole thing where like I think if any part of the movie comments on the hubris of the rich, it's that last scene because they thought like and then they think if they give the money back they'll survive. They like think if they tell the truth finally they'll survive, and it's like no, at a certain point it's too late. And Christopher Walken even tells him like you should never lie to your friends. And I think that like kind of like soliloquy, like because Christopher Walken, the whole movie, he's had admiration for these kids, even though they've kidnapped him, because they're so tight knit and they're such good friends that they're willing to like risk their lives to kind of do this, you know, and to save one of their own. And so Christopher Walken doesn't really kill them because they stole his money. I think he kills them more because the betrayal, not only to him but to their own friends, to people who trusted them the most. And so it kind of comments a little bit on that. And that's why I think if we had known more of the girl and felt more sorry for them, it wouldn't have worked as well because you kind of want to be like good.
Yeah, I can understand that,
No.
and
don't know if
I
agree
could
with
see
what you
it.
said.
Yeah.
It is a very convoluted plan, though.
Oh yeah. I
It's-
do know that there was two original endings, and one of them they just let him go and they kind of leave, and they take the money, of course, but they let him go. And in the second one, they let him go, like Charlie lets him go, and then Dennis Leary like shoots the boat, and they're like, "Oh no, the boat's gonna sink!" And like I don't know how like good shooting a boat with like a handgun would really like fuck it up. But,
Sink that yacht.
yeah.
It's more like
Yeah,
a
that's-
It's like a
that's
huge
kind of
yacht,
a-
yeah. But I mean,
That's
the
a
point is
strange
there.
idea.
But I think like if it had done those two, it would have been like, okay, we don't care about these characters enough to want them to have a happy ending. And B, it could have undermined the plot, which is like, again, like don't fucking lie to your friends.
Well, I
When-
don't think that he admired those kids at all. Like, where did you get the admiration? I think he thought.
And
they were all
I
fucking
do kind of get it, like
kids from number
because
one.
he kind of warms up to them over the course of it. I think definitely
Maybe.
Ira,
He's lying to them.
obviously,
That's the whole point. He's lying the whole time. It's
but
all
but
real.
like but like
but I don't
you almost
think he
feel like
is.
he doesn't like because he does get the like at the end essentially Dennis Leary figures it out and just has them all at gunpoint. And he's like, "Can I just shoot them all?" And he's like, "Well, no." He's like, he actually does feel bad for them. He's like, "Don't shoot that." He does have him kneecap Jay Moore, which I liked. But then he's
Yeah.
just like, "No, don't kill
I think
anyone." Like
maybe
that
this
would have been
is
that would have been too many police in this rich neighborhood. They would have never stopped until they found out who killed those kids. Like,
Yeah, but he still
he didn't like those
killed-
kids at all. He thought they were fucking idiots. Like, there's no
But
way.
then
If he did, it was
he
like a
killed them-
Stockholm syndrome thing.
He still killed them later. I don't think he was scared of the cops. I mean, he killed.
well,
whoever
no,
he
I
wanted.
mean,
Well,
like
on
in
a
the
yacht,
sense that
not all at the same place.
I guess
he killed the
I don't know.
he
I
killed
don't-
the two who screwed him over, but I don't think
Yeah.
he wanted to kill like TK or anything like
yeah,
that.
exactly.
I don't
Well, and
think-
maybe admiration is the wrong. Maybe
Maybe it
just
was.
like
Maybe I'm just
he
misinterpreting
understood. Yeah, he understood why they did it, and kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Respect.
think understand is
Respect
yeah.
them. Maybe-
respected
Yeah, he's
it,
like-
Myers sounds like he thought they
Yeah.
were cool.
No, yeah. Yeah, he definitely didn't like them. Other than
He thought
Ira.
Ira was cool,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
It's like,
me.
what?
I also thought
But
he was
yeah, but he understood why they did it. He kind of he didn't hold it against them because he said he wouldn't. And
Right.
so then that's why he ends up killing the other two and not killing everyone else because he's like, no, these are the people who are responsible, and I'm going to take care of the people
Yeah.
who are responsible. You know, like
Right.
if
the answer
they,
point.
yeah, if the couple hadn't decided to do this and hired the hitman, then he wouldn't have had to been kidnapped and lost his finger. And so he kills the hitman because they were responsible, and then he kills these two because they were the most responsible. And so yeah, I think it kind of I think that ending kind of ends on it. Kind of gives it a weird note, but I don't think it would have worked if it had ended any other way.
I would say
I-
that sounds like it ends on a technicality. Like, it was technically right, but that's like not the best right to be.
Right.
That's how I feel about that explanation.
Yeah, like logically, this is what should happen, but
Yeah.
I think it is kind of like the whole like clash of styles that happens off and on through the
Yeah.
movie. It's like that's almost where you're like leaving with like, oh, okay, it's
Okay.
all right.
What
Yeah,
happened?
it's a tight 90.
It is a tight 90, and I was never
Yeah,
bored.
which I
Not even
respect.
1 second. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of one of those movies where you're kind of playing with these ideas, and like you can tell, like you can almost tell who the director likes, and like
Yeah.
like character wise, you know, like because like I don't even know, like TK's in it kind of, but like Ira gets like a line or a
Oh,
moment
yeah.
every fucking scene,
Yeah.
and
It's got
so.
energy.
Yeah, and like the kind of like Max, who's the boyfriend, he even takes a back seat until like
Yeah.
it's important to call on him. But I think that kind of makes it interesting because it's kind of like Christopher Walken is around the people that he actually likes. he doesn't talk to anyone else. But that might also just be excusing other writing. But no, I think overall, I think the movie's cool. I think it's worth a
Yeah,
look, and I think
it's good.
like
It's
Oh
got
yeah,
good
I think so too.
vibes.
I think it's kind of one of those '90s films where it's like you don't really expect that it's gonna have so much, not division, but so much like who actually deserves to die in this movie. You know, like you kind of think of
Yeah.
it, and there's a certain point where they all kind of do, and I think that makes it interesting. I do think like kind of watching this back to back with Mickey and Nikki would be an interesting double feature to see how,
Yeah.
like, especially because one of them's directed by a woman, one of them's directed by a man, but they're kind of still dealing with this kind of male
Male
friendship through
camaraderie.
the
Yeah.
lens of criminality, and so
Crime. Yeah.
yeah, I think
Secret ingredient.
yeah, and then just finish it off with Reservoir Dogs, where nobody's friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting movie. I think you guys should check it out. Guys, would you recommend The Suicide Kings?
Absolutely.
I would. Yeah, I'd say it's a lost gem of the '90s.
It's on Matt, and yeah, let us know what you guys think. Do you think that it ended well? Do you think that people got justice, or do you think it was a cap out? But yeah, welcome back to the Bomb Squad. I think we were gone this week because we're waiting for a short that's coming out. But yeah, check it out. We'll be back next week with something. I don't know. And check out The Empty Space. It's on Tubi now. And then do a Hada marathon and be like, hey, is he getting better, or am I watching this in the wrong order? So we will see you guys next week on the Bizom Squad.